Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology, and first daily Mormon history podcast. I'm Rick Bennett. I'm excited to continue our conversation with Bob Roylance. He's the author of the Yucatan theory of the Book of Mormon. So we'll talk more about that, and we'll also compare it to one of the other important models, which is Heartland. Check out our conversation. Well, you know what? This brings up the first thing that Heartlanders are going to call you on, as well as some non-believers.
We're all by ourselves on this.
It's called the Hill Cumorah theory, where basically, so you're saying the final battle was in the Yucatan Peninsula?
Yeah.
And so then a Heartlander is going to say, well, how did they get from Mexico or Yucatan to, how did the plates get from there to the Hill Cumorah in New York?
Oh, he had, 40 years?
Okay.
You know, Mormon went into his stash of records and pulled out these plates. And he gave them to him like you better get out of here before you're killed, you know. And you've got 40 years to get to Hill Cumorah.
To the other Hill Cumorah.
And so, in New York, you know. Mm-hmm. And who knows how he got there. He could have been in all kinds of ways, you know, via the water, via walking, via spiritual ways. I don't know, you know.
Well, those plates get kind of heavy.
So there's plenty of legitimate reasons how that could have happened, I think.
Okay. And so that's not something that bothers you?
Oh, no.
Because the Heartlanders love to say, there's only one Hill Cumorah.
Yeah. Well, if you read that scripture where he hands them the records, if he didn't intend him to go, then he would say, hey, this is where the records are, so just take care of them. But he handed them the records, the important ones, and said, essentially said, get out of here. You know, so he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it just makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that's a place where the Heartlanders are going to be like, nah, we don't agree, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's what's fun about this is everybody disagrees with each other on certain points.
Yeah. So.
So what else can you tell us about Yucatan as being the Book of Mormon lands?
Well, the Yucatan, you get up in Chetnal Bay. I think Chetnal Bay is where the Jaredites landed, or close to that. You know,
Chetnal Bay, and where's that?
That's in the very corner of southeast Yucatan.
Southeast. So are you proposing an Atlantic crossing for Lehigh instead of a Pacific?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so there you're on board with the Heartlanders.
Yeah. Yeah, when I look at the journey of the Pacific, I just say there's no way that can happen. You know, you got to go over Mongolia, Russia, China. I don't know what. No, I'm not sure what they do. But that would be so historic.
It's like twice as long as the Atlantic Way.
Oh, well, just the land. Yeah. Just the land. That would be so historic. But there's nothing said about it in the Book of Mormon. There is absolutely nothing said about that trip.
Have you followed George Potter at all?
No.
Do you know who George is?
No.
So one of the things about, I know the Ashtons are another group. They think that Lehigh and his family went down the Frankincense Trail into Oman.
Yeah, I buy that.
Took a left turn into Yemen, basically.
Yeah.
And then the question is, did they go across the Indian and Pacific Ocean, or did they go down around Africa and over to Yucatan or Florida, as Heartlanders think? But so, I mean, the Meso guys sounds like think they hug the coast of India and China and everywhere and then jetted across the Pacific. But that's twice as far as going around Africa and over to Florida or Yucatan.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that believe that, very, very clearly believe that. But one of the things that...
Because the traditional Meso theory is it was Pacific crossing, but you don't buy that.
Because one of the reasons I don't buy it, because there's one scripture that tells about the first landing, and the first landing is by the Hill Cumorah. So that blows up that theory, because they had to land over there somewhere on the Mexican coast. And the Mexican coast is a pretty rough place. It's not the paradise, the choice land above all others that you find, where you find in Belize. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why that doesn't work. One of the criticisms of ours, the 354 days, something like that, it took the Jaredites to cross. Typically, that shouldn't take that long, and so that's one criticism. But I think that...
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I know. I don't think you follow my podcast. I interviewed a guy named Philip Beale,
Yeah.
and he circumnavigated Africa, and it took him over 2 years. So 1 year, 354 days.
No, this is going through... I show them... the Jaredites went north, directly north, or northward. The term is northward, so it's not necessarily direct. They hit the Black Sea. They built some barges there, probably a trial run barges, to get them to in Europe. Then they went probably by Switzerland and then end up at the northern side of Spain, where there's big, tall pine trees.
Through the Mediterranean Ocean, is that what you're saying?
No, they went around through the land to the... see, they had to go up through the Black Sea, and that put them in Europe, in kind of middle Europe.
Okay.
So from there they just went there to northern Spain.
Oh, and then they took off from Spain.
And there's a unusual mountain there to get the stones, and also there's a bunch of pine trees that are really tall and straight, and they could build the ships. And to me, that's not a big issue. They could have gone other ways, but that is a possibility, But they hooked onto the North American current that took them towards the Canary Islands. Then they hit the Canary Island current.
Right.
I believe that because that is a rapid currents, that they probably, they had all kinds of animals and bees and all kinds of, I don't know how they did it if they've been up for 300 some odd days. So I
think it took Philip, because he went along the Mediterranean down by Spain, the Canary Islands, and over, and it took him 9 months.
9 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if that is a problem for somebody, then the Canary Islands could be an answer. It doesn't say they did, but, that whole, how many years were the Jaredites? 2,000 years, and there's only about a few chapters devoted to their activities. Mm-hmm. Most of the chapters are filled with theology and spiritual comments, but there's a few chapters that tell about their travels, and they could have easily left that out, But
that's an important part of the story, though.
Yeah. Well, you can take it any way you want, on that one if you're going from that way. But the currents, the South Caribbean currents, just takes it right into Belize.
Right.
Boom, right there.
Okay.
So that part is really neat,
Yeah. Well, cool. Okay. So, all right. So you believe in Atlantic crossing, and then they ended up in the Yucatan Peninsula. So both Lehi and the Jaredites did that, basically?
No. Lehi came around through the Pacific.
Oh, I thought
they
you
probably
said...
followed the islands, there's some islands.
Oh, I thought you said he didn't go through the Pacific.
Lehi?
Yeah.
No. I'm talking about Muley, or I'm talking, no, Jaredites.
So the Jaredites went across the Atlantic, and Lehi went across the Pacific.
Yeah, and the Mulekites went across the Atlantic.
And so but that's twice the distance, right, across the Pacific, the Atlantic? Oh,
yeah. It's a long, by the time you figure all that land bridge, that land, and then all that Pacific, a huge journey. It's massive.
Well, so the Ashtons and George Potter both believe that Nephi built a harbor in Yemen. And
I believe that too.
And the question is, did he go through the Pacific?
Oh, I don't know.
Or around Africa? The Heartlanders are going to say around Africa, and the Meso people say Pacific.
No,
I thought you said that Lehi landed on the east side of the Yucatan. Didn't you say that?
No, that's the Mulekites.
That was the Mulekites.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would have to support the Pacific on Lehi. because that
even though
that,
it's twice the distance.
Yeah, because my whole model is dependent on the fact that they arrived at the Pacific coast. My whole model.
Couldn't they have just done what the Jaredites did?
The only thing they
would that
could
be
have
a
done,
problem?
if they went on the Pacific somewhere, they'd have to go down around the South America, get into the Atlantic.
Because here's the problem. So Philip Beale, I'll have to send you a link to that interview because that was pretty interesting. He's an English guy who wanted to recreate this trip around Africa, and because he had heard that Herodotus, the ancient philosopher Herodotus, had said that the ancient Phoenicians circumnavigated Africa and it took them 3 years. So Philip wanted to redo that, and so he, in 2009, took off he actually went from Syria through the Red Sea, everything. I mean, not quite exactly what Lehi would have done, but close enough. And then he went around, and when he got down to Cape Town, South Africa, the winds just automatically blew him practically to Florida. He was only 300 miles from Florida, but his purpose was to circumnavigate Africa, and so all he can do to turn this ship around and sail back. And so he did. It took him 2 years and 2 months. But the Heartlanders are saying, well, if the winds and the currents just take you to Florida, that's a much easier way to go. And I asked him specifically about a Pacific crossing. And if you're using a sailboat, this is what he said. If you're using a sailboat, it's best to go west. So that would be, from Cape Town, you're going west to Florida, basically. And the currents and the wind just automatically take you there. And so if you're starting off, I mean, even if you wanted to say Lehi got to Japan, the wind's against you. It's not, and I asked him about the equatorial current, and he's like, well, that's like a mile an hour. The wind's going to blow you backwards more than the current's going to take you forwards. And so he really said that a Pacific crossing is really not feasible. That if you're going to get to America from the old world, you pretty much have to go through the Atlantic Ocean. Pacific's almost impossible.
I don't know. There at the proposed landing site, Lehi's landing site, there's quite a bit of evidence that he was there. And then, of course, my belief that Salama Valley is the land of Nephi, which is about 150 miles from the site where they landed.
On the West Coast?
On the West Coast. So that all fits really well. I mean, there's the Tree of Life thing that has a lot of...
Well, do you have a map of the Yucatan that you could pull up really quick? Because it seems to me the Yucatan, it's in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be hard to get to the west coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, especially unless you're coming from the Atlantic Ocean, isn't it? Okay, so as we're looking at that map, if you're saying that Lehi landed on the west coast of the Yucatan
right in
Peninsula,
here.
Oh, so that's not really the Yucatan Peninsula. That's more like, what is that, Guatemala?
Yeah, well, it's on the line. It's right on the line of Mexico and Guatemala.
Okay, I was misunderstanding that then.
Okay.
Because I was thinking you were up by Campeche or whatever that is.
Well, that's the Mulekite. And the Jaredite and the Mulekites came from the Atlantic side.
Okay.
The Lehites came from the Pacific side.
Well, Lehi took the longer, harder route then. And that just doesn't seem... I mean, after talking to Philip Beale, he convinced me a Pacific crossing is like crazy hard. Like, and you can't do that with a sailboat. So, but you think that's what happened?
Well, I guess that is one point I agree with all the other people, the Mesoamerica people. I kind of gave him that as a... I never really studied that.
And so he started out in Guatemala, and then they just went up. So that was allowed southward, and then just went up into the Yucatan Peninsula.
Okay. The question is what?
So he started out in Guatemala, right?
Yeah, right here.
Okay.
Nephi did.
Nephi, and then that's the land southward, and then they went up into Belize and
Well,
Yucatan Peninsula.
the land of Nephi would be right in this area here,
Okay.
and then the land of Zarahemla would be here.
Okay.
And then the 350 treaty, where all of the Nephites had to go north, it would be right from here on up.
Okay.
And then the final war would be in this area here.
Okay.
So that's how my model fits.
All right.
But both the Mulekites and the Jaredites came into here, and the currents here were very favorable for that landing right in here.
Okay.
And right through here during the early days of the Jaredites, there's some of the earliest settlements in the Yucatan, right in here, or in Central America. Some of the very earliest settlements. They're in the we call a formative period.
Okay.
And to me, that's a very powerful piece of evidence.
Okay. If only we could find a sign that said Nephi was here.
You know, I've never paid much attention. I went to that site, where they landed. I was there, and I saw the possibility of a temple. Mm-hmm. Solomon's temple is about the same size.
Well, that's another question I have for you, because it seems like most of the temples, in fact, as you look at there, they've got a big pyramid there.
Yeah, Chichen Itza. Yeah.
That doesn't look like a Semitic temple, does it?
I don't know.
I mean, if you look at some of those Old Testament videos, they've got the tabernacle. In fact, I think at BYU right now, there was a big display of the tabernacle, I think getting ready for Easter or something. And it looks nothing like the step pyramid.
Yeah.
So the architect, because Nephi said he built a temple like unto Solomon, well, that wouldn't be a pyramid, would it?
Well, okay, the temples, Nephi and the Nephites they didn't build any of these kind of things. It'd been the Jaredites that would build them. And so they came from a different culture than the Nephites.
Okay. So all the step pyramids are Jaredite pyramids?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any pyramids that are... In fact, in Sebal, well, there's a few little pyramids there. Maybe they kind of got... And they were constructed probably by the Mulekites while they're there. But
so all the architecture we have are Mulekite and Jaredite. They're not Nephite.
Well, I think in Sebal and in Nichinchich, where we showed those cities, I think that's Mulekite or Nephite type.
Okay. But they're still kind of step pyramids, aren't they? Or maybe I'm misremembering.
Well, there's some pyramids in both. There's one period in Chichen Itza, or in Nichinchich, yeah. In Sebal, there's a few small pyramids. But those could have been... I think we need more information on the timing of when they were built, because a lot of pyramids were built after the demise of the Nephites. A lot of temples were built after that.
Okay.
So there needs to be a study of the timing of how those temples. Now there's also some temples built before Christ, but that's up in the northern part. But that's a good question. That's a real good question.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Bob Roylance, author of the Yucatan Peninsula theory of the Book of Mormon. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about the location of the Hill Cumorah. Where does Bob think it is?
Hill Cumorah, and my Hill Cumorah is only 10 miles north of Lamani.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that to me, that whole area there where the Hutterites are would be the Nephite land where they had villages and cities and things.
If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, subscribe on either Patreon or at gospeltangents.com. For just $5 a month, you can hear the entire audio uninterrupted. On our $10 tier, if you would like to see the whole video, you can see that either on youtube.com/gospeltangents, or I've got a special Facebook group devoted for full videos. So subscribe at gospeltangents.com and sign up for just $10 a month. For $20 a month, if you'd like to get some bonus content, maybe some of the stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor, you can sign up for that. And then if you'd like to talk to me for $100 a month, we'll do a monthly phone call on something like Zoom, and you can ask me anything you want. So thanks again. Also, don't forget about the merch, mugs, t-shirts, hats, things like that. I'm trying to get the ties up there. Hopefully I can get up there. And thanks again for watching Gospel Tangents, and click here for some more videos.